Staten Island. We're so glad that all of you could join us. For those joining us in person, please remember to stay masked during the service, unless you're up here speaking. If you do so, you can feel free to sing along to the hymns. Please do, in fact. Also remember to silence your cell phones if you haven't already at this time. For those of you joining us online, welcome to you also. If you have a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat box, that would be wonderful. Everybody's is invited to join us for a coffee hour. For those in person, after the service, through those doors, we'll have coffee, snacks. For those online, feel free to join us for a virtual coffee hour where you can unmute yourselves and chat it up. Our speaker this morning will be Regina Cassidy, who's joined us before. I'll give her a more formal introduction later. We'll be speaking on mindfulness, but I wanted to mention that now because one more announcement. Also after coffee hour at 12:30, everyone is invited. There's been a small group of us meeting to just meet to meditate and kind of speak about mindfulness from 12:30 to 2 in the library, which is back there. And I think I've covered everything I'm supposed to cover. So here are our opening words for today's service. I am here. I see the golden leaves. Their rustling comforts me. Deep green moss covers the roots in front of me. I bend to touch the softness and I remember. The ground is solid, frozen in the wintry temperature. The air smells fresh and cold. I open my mouth wide and breathe in. Ah, I am here. And now I invite you to join me in lighting our chalice. You can find the affirmation in our order of service. We light this chalice in the search for truth and the spirit of love. We unite in worship and fellowship. And now, as an extension of lighting our chalice, I want to take a moment of silence to light these candles for some of the names of those who have recently been affected by police brutality. We cannot cover all of the names of those affected, but this morning we want to light a candle for the life of Joe Don Williams, for the life of Jeriante Gibson, and for the life of Leonte Kirk. May these lights be a symbol of our commitment to continue the work of racial justice and to proclaim that Black Lives Matter.
Please turn in your teal hymnal to number 1009, Meditation on Breathing. It's actually a three-part song. Many of you are familiar with it, but here's how we're going to do it. We'll sing the drone part, the lower line, 3 twice. Then we'll sing the top line, melody, 3 twice. Then in the middle line, let's hear 3 twice. And then 2 more times into the wild part. Choose any of the 3 times you like. Let's sing. All right, the drum. Wow.
Thank you, Carolyn and the choir. That went very well with the opening words. We didn't even collaborate on that, so it worked out well. So now is the time in our service for joys and sorrows. If you're visiting us for the first time, feel free to introduce yourselves if you'd like. And those gathering in person, I invite you to raise your hand and then stand where you're seated. I'll give you the microphone to share your joy or sorrow. We invite you to share what's in your heart. And those joining us online, we invite you to type into the chat your joys and sorrows. Ben will read them aloud. And we also invite you to share what's in your heart this morning.
Hi, my name is Sally. I've got two joys related to this woman here, Mary Campbell. One is that Mary's part of an exhibit in the next room that stopped the invasion in Ukraine. And there's wonderful artists who have done amazing work. And I hope you'll see it. I hope you come to coffee hour and you'll see it. And my other joy related to Mary is that she's an artist in there, but she also did our holiday card. And Friday was the last day to contribute. But if you haven't contributed and you want to let me know that you're going to, just let me know in coffee hour and we'll add your name. And we're going to send out holiday wishes. Thank you, everybody who has contributed. Thank you.
Thank you. And my joy is that I was able to bring this exhibit to the church here. And I will be in coffee hour, so if anyone has any questions, ask.
Hi, I'm Janet. I just want to say that for some reason I feel very thankful to be alive today because we had a very harrowing experience driving all the way out to like by Jones Beach yesterday in that horrible rain and fog, and it was very scary. We had an engagement party to go to. So what are you going to do? It was very scary. I really thought we were going to have some kind of crash somewhere, but coming home, I was so, I kissed the ground, that I was so happy to get home. I never was so happy to get home in my life, as that was a really terrifying trip. But, you have an engagement party. What are you going to do? You don't want to miss it. So, but I'm alive.
Thank you, Sally, and that. Mary and Janet.
Hi, I'm Juliet. Months ago, some medical tests were scheduled, and I really cast a pall over my mind because they could be very negative based on previous tests. I had the test this week, 3 different tests, and they all turned out really well. They all turned out normal. So I'm just very relieved about that. And it wasn't really expected. I was just waiting for something negative to happen, and it didn't happen. So I am very, very grateful for that.
That's wonderful.
I feel like we're going in order. We're really not. So if you don't have a joy or a sorrow, please don't feel pressured. Anyway, I'm Chris. And in addition to the joys that we have about our exhibit next door, which is the first that the church has had, quote, kind of, sort of, almost post-pandemic, which is yay. And the other is that yesterday there was a demonstration at Snug Harbor against an event that was going on at Staten Island Children's Museum, Drag Love Story. And folks got together and decided that this was an atrocity, and that couldn't be. So they gathered their minions and they marched in. But I think there were as many people standing against their message of lack of tolerance, lack of understanding of people have to be who they have to be, and that should always be supported and loved. So go, Staten Islanders who stood against that hate, and go Staten Island Pride Center. That was part of the leadership of bringing that together. And on a note, Carol Bullock from the Staten Island Pride Center will be one of our speakers in the early 2023. So, go us, go Staten Island.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm Randy, and I have a bit of a sorrow. Mike and Maureen were going to be doing the coffee hour today, but Maureen tested positive. today or yesterday. And so she's fairly asymptomatic. She just woke up 15 minutes ago or so. So she's been getting some rest. And we wish her the best.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, do over, but it's a joy and a sorrow that you'll see in your order of service that Darrell Berger will be in the pulpit on December 11th and December 18th. Those, unfortunately, as we're all aware, will be his last during his temporary stay with us. So we just ask everybody to do your best to kind of come out on those days, because I know that across the board, we have been so grateful that Darrell was able to give us at least, the first half of our church year. And he's been like, a screaming success, and we loved him then and we love him again. But we know he's not leaving us. He may be in the Poconos, and he's always going to be a resource for us. But just do your best to come out on those days and let him know that how much we appreciated what he's been doing for us the past number of months.
Thanks for that reminder.
Linda Santloper. I actually haven't been coming consistently lately, but I have great news. As some of you know, that I have two granddaughters, one from each of my sons, which I jokingly say that's because I didn't kill them when they were adolescents and drove me insane. But my younger son and his wife are expecting a new baby. She's in her early part of her pregnancy, but she is a high-risk pregnancy for different health reasons. So what they have asked me to do is sort of move in with them for the next 2 months. So I'm going to not be here quite as much on Staten Island as I have been. So thank you.
Thanks, Linda. I'll miss you. Oh, I thought you were. Anybody else? Or should we go to Ben? Nothing in the chat. Yeah, so thanks for everybody who shared their joys and sorrows, some good news and bad news. We want to invite everybody into a moment of silence to reflect on these things, and also for whatever was left unsaid this morning. So let's just have a brief moment. May the words and the silence we've shared remind us that no matter our joys and sorrows, we're not alone. May it be. So our reading this morning is from Thich Nhat Hanh. Who, as many of you may know, is a Buddhist monk in Vietnam, did a lot of work for peace there, as well as a lot of work in inner peace. So he wrote, present moment, wonderful moment. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. Breathing in, I calm my body. Reciting this line is like drinking a glass of cool lemonade on a hot day. You can feel the coolness permeate your body. When I breathe in and recite this line, I actually feel my breath calming my body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. You know, a smile can relax hundreds of muscles in your face. I think that means in your face. It says in your faith, but maybe there's some double entendre there. Wearing a smile on your face is a sign that you are a master of yourself. Dwelling in the present moment. While I sit here, I don't think of anything else. I sit here and I know exactly where I am. I know this is a wonderful moment. It is a joy to sit stable, and at ease, and return to our breathing, our smiling, our true nature. Our appointment with life is in this present moment. If we do not have peace and joy right now, when will we have peace and joy? Tomorrow or after tomorrow? What is preventing us from being happy right now? As we follow our breathing, we can simply say, calming, smiling, present moment, wonderful moment. So ends today's reading. And now is a time in our service where we take an offering. We know it's the gifts of all of us that help us support our ability to thrive and gather. For those attending in person, we invite you to drop your offering to the baskets that will be passed. And for those online, links and instructions will be posted in the chat. You can mail us a check or donate through the PayPal giving page on our website. And please give as generously as you can. And our offerings will be gratefully received. Thank you.
What is life? We long to know. Where are we from? Where do we go? Where do we find what we love? What is right wrong? Is the answer walk away? My favorite line, are not conveyed. Oh, we seek it from above, behind it here and we are. It is a weakness flash of light, bright white sense, and through the night. It is a tiny looking glass, so blue, upon we play of God. It is a saving power, where it reaches to her way. It is a shadow as it runs, moved itself in setting sun. What is life? We are so deep. It is so rare. Easily breathe. It is all wonder that we see. It is a daily dance of faith. It is the air. It is the flow. The holy ground. Already go. Between the veil and the soul. Life is a moment that goes. Life is a moment Great hymn, number 331. Life is the Jesus yet alone. Life is the greatest gift of all.
Thank you, Carolyn, Kevin, and Beatrice. And thank you to all of you who sang along. Before I introduce our speaker, Regina Cassidy, I just want to share kind of the story behind her being here, which is very serendipitous. So originally, Thupten Punsak, who has joined us before, was going to be here, who is himself a Tibetan Buddhist or former Tibetan Buddhist monk who was going to be speaking on mindfulness. And when he texted me, Dave, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be back from overseas in time, a week and a half ago. I think it helped that because of who he is and because of the topic, it's like, all right, now's not the time for me to freak out, right? Let me take a breath and like everything's going to work out. And the very next day I run into Regina Cassidy and her husband, Tom. And I think you were there, Tom. No. Yeah. And and I was reminded that Emily once invited Regina recently, and she came and spoke to us. So something inside said, yeah, just ask Regina. And I didn't tell her what the former topic was going to be. And I said, what topic would you like to speak on? And she said, mindfulness. So it all came full circle. So Regina Cassidy is a lifelong Staten Islander, as well as a wife, mother of 3, and grandmother of 3, soon to be 4. Congratulations. She's a teacher, social worker, and an interfaith lay religious leader. Please welcome Regina Cassidy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Well, continuing what Dave was just saying, when Dave invited me to speak to you, it was the last thing on my mind. It was Thanksgiving Day, and I was at the local turkey trot at Clove Lakes Park. He's a runner, and my son is a runner. Several of my sons are runners, but my son Mike is a runner, and he was running that day. And I never expected to be asked to preach. But I was surprised and delighted. The last time I was here, when Emily asked me to come, it was great, but I knew you had a new pastor, Dara, who I've recently met on an online interfaith group, and I thought I'd never be needed again. And I really didn't know he was going to be leaving right now either. But though I was surprised that day, I readily agreed, but I had no idea of a topic. But one thing that did come to me was something that Dave said, speak to me on something that's in your heart. Well, mindfulness has been in my heart for a while. Mindfulness popped up, and when I told him, he said, that's something you've all been working on. And that was amazing to me. You see, I'm a beginner. I'm an amateur on the topic, not like the Buddhist monk who would have been here if I wasn't here. And while the idea of mindfulness attracts me, I'm not really sure I have a grasp on it. And so I hope I learned from you today, if you're willing to participate later on. If some of you might recall the last time I was here, I shared with you my thoughts and personal conflicts about the war that was beginning in the Ukraine and nonviolence. You helped me then, and I hope you could help me again now. Well, how and why was I introduced to mindfulness? Well, about a year ago, I began to directly address a lifelong issue that I've had, OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, and the accompanying anxiety it causes me. I guess I've known all my life I've had OCD. I've periodically tried to get help, but nothing really seemed to work. But this time, about a year ago, I addressed the issue face on and got some focused help right up to present. And right up to this day, I've had my good times and my bad times. And without getting into it all, one thing that has been suggested to me by my therapist is mindfulness. So it's both a concept that's close to my heart and my mind, And that's how I came to choose the topic for today. And I've had several weeks since Thanksgiving to focus on it. But again, I hope you'll help me with your understanding of it. Let me start with a recent example of how it plays a role in my life. Just a couple of days ago, Thursday, I found myself getting very anxious and overwhelmed with many concerns. I started getting texts. I had things to do, decisions to make before I even ate breakfast. So I knew what I had to do. I had to get out. I had to take a walk. I had to take a walk in Clove Lakes Park. That's my place to go. So I took a good long walk, trying to be as calm as possible, saying to myself, I'm just going to let it be. I'm just going to do the best I can at this mindfulness thing. So I looked around, I breathed in deeply, I noticed things, sounds, smells, and eventually I went home and resumed my day. And yet it wasn't until lunchtime when I realized that I felt different. I had forgotten the stress, even the need to be mindful. I just felt relaxed. Now, I must admit, I must confess that by the end of the day, I did have a bit of a meltdown, some stress returned, but I hope and I think that I was able to recover a little bit faster than I would have if I hadn't taken that earlier walk. Now, throughout my life, I've heard of different practices like mindfulness, namely meditation and contemplation. But how I hated the thought of meditation and contemplation. Be alone with my thoughts, let go of all the distractions in my life, sit still for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. That was horrible to me. My mind, I'm glad somebody laughed just now. That was horrible to me. My mind would wander. I'd be planning all sorts of to-do lists. I just couldn't sit still. Forget it. And when I heard people say that they meditated for an hour or more, or they went away on silent retreats, I felt just worse. What's wrong with me? I thought. But then I heard about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Well, its Buddhist roots say that it's simply to observe things as they are. And it uses a word to describe this, sati, S-A-T-I, meaning remembering to be aware, observing things simply as they are. And other religions and traditions have something like this as well. From author Kabat-Zinn, he writes, mindfulness is acknowledging and accepting what is happening in the present moment exactly as it is. It's paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, to the unfolding of the experience that's happening. It's developing the ability to notice. And it's keeping your mind close to your body. Keeping your mind close to your body. I really like that thought. It's being conscious of what's happening at the moment, not before, not after, but right now. Not what could be, what would be, what might be, what was yesterday, what might be tomorrow. No, the focus is here right now. So as I said, when Dave asked me to preach, I got excited, enthused, and then I got stressed. Once you get to know me, you'll know I tend to make things very complicated. But that's where my 18-month-old grandson, Merritt, comes in. Merritt is our grandson that lives in Brooklyn, and he's the one that's expecting a sibling next month. But at Halloween time, my husband and I, we take care of him weekly. We decided we were going to take him on a nice walk around the neighborhood, a couple of blocks away. We wanted him to see something that we thought was spectacular. Well, Merritt had other ideas. He didn't make it beyond the end of his own block. He saw dump trucks and bulldozers, and he stood there mesmerized. He just watched them back and forth, back and forth. He just stood there mesmerized. And finally, it dawned on me, a dopey grandma, that this was enough. There was no need to race to the other block. It was okay to just stand there and watch the bulldozers and the diggers and all that. And I'll tell you, we still could be there today if we had let him. He was very mindful, and he had great focused attention. And the same thing happened with Merritt on Thanksgiving. We were the hosts that day, and I had millions of things on my mind. But after this main dinner was served, I happened to find myself in the living room with Merritt and one of those stacking toys that you put the rings on and the squares on and so on. He had total focus and attention on that, even though his other cousins were running around and his aunts and uncles were inside. And my mind was actually hopping around from, okay, I got to get the dessert out and the coffee made and all that. I just watched him for some reason sit there and drop the rings on the pegs, dump them off, deliberately pick up the rings, put them back on, and stack them all over again. And something just made me sit there and stay with him, to try to be just as mindful and focused as Merritt was. I wonder if you'd be willing to try this with me now, to be like my grandson. If you could just try for a few minutes with me, alternating maybe your eyes open, your eyes closed. Let's start with a deep breath. What are you aware of? What are you hearing? Keep breathing. What do you smell? Feel. Sense. Is it your body sitting? Are your hands touching something? Do you have any taste sensations? Breathe in deeply again. Any taste sensations now? Thank you for trying this with me. Now, a few years ago, I went to seminary as an older adult, and I was thrilled. It was a lifelong dream to finally get there. And I expected to learn lots of theology, scriptures, and about other faiths. I sat in classes that had a range of beliefs. Some were very literal, and others were very liberal. Some were Christian, Muslim, and in between. So, what was the very first thing I learned in my very first semester that I still remember the most to this day? I learned about washing dishes. Washing dishes, you may say? My first semester professor gave us a meditation on washing dishes. And I looked at him. Was he crazy? Well, it's taken me all these years to figure out what he was doing. This professor gave us a simple meditation on washing dishes, written in the 17th century by a monk named Brother Lawrence. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He was a very simple man who longed for greatness in his monastery, but instead, he was given mundane jobs like shoe repairs, shopping, and most of all, kitchen duty. And it was in his little book, The Practice of the Presence of God, where he wrote about washing dishes. And this is where I found a great connection between mindfulness, prayer, and a constant awareness of God, or of a higher power of your understanding. I was very drawn to Brother Lawrence because of his kitchen experience, because I love being in the kitchen. Cooking, baking, while listening to the radio, that's my thing. In fact, one of my son's friends commented once, "Why is your mom always in the kitchen when I come over?" I don't know, but I know my mom was always in the kitchen. My mother-in-law was always in the kitchen. And so we were very similar. And I was drawn to Brother Lawrence's writing because it seemed that he was always in the kitchen. Well, there's written down in his book conversations that he had between him and his biographer that I'd like to share some little thoughts from. The most excellent method he found of going to God was of doing his most common business of the day without any view of pleasing man, but purely for the love of God. He also found that it was a great delusion to think that times of prayer should be different from these ordinary times. When appointed times of prayer were over in his chapel, he found there was no difference because he continued to be with God, praising and talking to him as he passed the rest of the day in joy. He said we ought not to be weary of doing little things for the love of God and not regarding the greatness of his work, but the love with which it was performed. And so he went about his work in the kitchen, where he was cook for the society he belonged to. And he spent all the intervals of his time in prayer. That is, when he began, he spoke to God with a trust in him. God, you're with me, and now in obedience to your commands, I ask you to help me to be in your presence as I go about my daily chores. And as he found such a great advantage of doing this, it was natural for him to recommend this to others. But actually, it was his example of peacefulness that was a greater inducement than any arguments that he could offer to his friends and peers. His very gentle countenance was edifying, such a sweet and calm devotion appearing that did not seem to affect his beholders. And it was observed that even in the hurry of his kitchen, the busyness, he still preserved his recollection and quiet-mindedness. He was never hasty. He wasn't loitering, but he did each thing in its season with an even, uninterrupted composure and tranquility of spirit. The time of business, said he, does not differ from me from the time in prayer. And in the noise and clutter of my kitchen, while several people are calling on me to do this and do that, I possess God in great tranquility, just the same as if I were on my knees in the chapel. Well, that was Brother Lawrence. And how am I doing? Me. Well, I'm not calm in a busy kitchen. I'm not calm on Thanksgiving, a big day of cooking. I probably won't be calm when Christmas comes around. And I'm not exactly sure that washing dishes is a great meditation for me either. It took my husband and me several days without a dishwasher to get the Thanksgiving dishes washed up. And we mostly used paper plates, although we had lots of pots and pans. So it did take us many days, and I'm not sure I was really meditating while I was cleaning. But on that same weekend after Thanksgiving, I decided to do something I like to do, and I decided to make another pie because we actually had run out of pies. And I started kneading the pie dough. And it felt so good, the flour and the butter, just mixing it with my hands. And I probably overdid it. I probably toughened the dough by doing it a lot, but it just felt so good and silky on my hand. And that became a moment of mindfulness for me. Just kneading the dough. As a friend of mine said very simply, just invite God into everything you do. Mindfully include God, or whatever you call God, into your daily experiences. For me that day, it was kneading the pie dough. It's also when I crochet the baby blanket I'm trying to finish for my new grandchild. It's a time like this when I'm busy with my hands, but I can be helping me to breathe slowly, to look at what I'm doing, to slow down and to feel the wool, to feel the needle going in and out. And as I said, walking in the park is my best time of all. Observing leaves, especially this time of the year. Seeing and feeling the rocks under my feet. Seeing the sun stream through the trees. And feeling awe. Feeling great awe at what's around me. Most of the time, as I said, I tried too hard. I tried too hard to be mindful. Like yesterday, I told my husband, again, I was in the kitchen, I told him, I'm trying to be mindful, don't talk to me. I really did, right, Tom? Yes. But no matter what I do, I'm trying, kneading dough, crocheting, walking, cooking, cleaning, whatever. It may be my OCD that's getting involved and telling me I got to do it perfectly. I got to be mindful perfectly. So I know that I have to learn to relax more. And it was my therapist that gave me a good little image, I think, that helps me. If you can picture uncooked spaghetti or uncooked linguine, it's very stiff and tight. Well, that's the way I am much of the time, very stiff and tight. But then if you could cook the spaghetti, what happens? Limp and flat. In fact, I tried that with my little 3-year-old grandson recently. When he gets tense in a little competition with his sister, his baby sister, I said, come on, let's think about.
I'm just buckling the service. Fuck you say.
Think about being tough, stiff spaghetti, and then let's cook it and relax. And we did do that. We cooked it and we saw the relaxingness nature of it. So with the anxiety I feel about being mindful, I try to hand it over to God. As womanist Dr. Christina Cleveland said, the emphasis is on presence, not performing, not doing, but actually doing less, on not being focused on the checklist, but just showing up and being present. To dismantle always having to do something, to always having to be useful. That mystical invitation to just show up and to be attentive to my breath, to my body, to be aware of what's happening in the world around me. The invitation to be that and not to be reactive. Just to ask God to hold it because it's too much for me to hold alone. an invitation to let go and to move into contemplative practice and rest. Just rest. Now, this is the time I wanted to ask if there's anyone who wanted to share your own experiences with mindfulness. Does mindfulness play a role in your life? Does anything make mindfulness difficult or easier for you? Is there any way that you overcome distractions or anxieties? Good or better places to be mindful? Is there anyone who would like to share?
I'll share actually, and then I'll pass the mic. It's funny you said that because I was planning on, since I was going to be up front, sharing something. So I'm glad you're inviting everybody to share. But your story reminded me. So I've had in the past struggles with great anxiety. I mean, to a really intense, like, they locked me up kind of extent. And about, I don't know if it was 15 years ago, I felt that coming on again. And I was so scared because I didn't want to, maybe I'll just say it. I think I've shared some of this before with all of you. I didn't want to be in a mental hospital again, So I went in my pocket and I found an orange and I took it out and I just started peeling it. And I started peeling it and everything went away. So just everything you're saying, the kneading. And then later, it's funny, I was sharing this story and somebody, I forget, I should have wrote down the name of the, whatever the program he took, but he's like, that's the thing, like in blah, 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 they teach you to calm your anxiety by peeling an orange. So I don't know.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I like that.
Yeah.
I've had anxiety for, a really long time, and I just always try to clamp it down so I don't act like I have anxiety. And that's exactly how I act. Like I don't have anxiety, but inside I have it, So it's like a very top down kind of like try to control it. And, so over the past year, I tried, a meditation app, and, I never thought much of meditation before. But going through it, what I really embrace and love about it is that in anxiety, my mind is, like you said, it's very far away from my body. It's like years in the future, or it's in next week, or it's never in the here and now. That's where the anxiety takes me. What if this? What if that? So meditating and being mindful of the here and now, it's like puts the reins on the wild horse, right? So the horse doesn't gallop away. And so I find the most helpful thing to focus on my breathing, even just counting my breaths. And like you, I really find it valuable. It's a little hard to do now because it's so cold. Meditating outside, definitely a peak experience. I feel really connected to the earth when that happens. I feel connected to everything that is when I'm meditating in nature, And it's just a very simple thing for me. If I focus on the thing that is going to continue as my breathing, then I can retreat from all the places my mind wants to go. So I let the body keep me in the here and now. So I found it incredibly helpful, and I was totally a skeptic and not like, I can't do this and I can barely focus for a few seconds. And what mindfulness and meditation taught me is that you're not perfect. You're not going to do it perfectly. You can't put these expectations on yourself. Just focus on the breath. That's basically it. And I found that incredibly helpful.
That's great. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to offer a thought? Thank you. As in conclusion, a recent New York Times article written by columnist Sarah Wildman sounds an awful lot like Brother Lawrence, though written so much later. She says, I've come to see the wisdom in not just seeking, but finding joy in the mundane, in the unremarkable, even in the frankly boring. I realize that I am far from unique in my efforts to appreciate the moment. It is the essence of mindfulness, the stuff of my often failed efforts to meditate, but it has allowed me to stand still when I might otherwise never stop moving. The title for my sermon was Walking, Kneading, and Healing, but it actually has another meaning for me. I also meant needing, Needing. I need healing. And I believe that it just may be these moments of mindfulness that are healing me. And I hope that mindfulness could be healing for you as well. Thank you.
Please turn now in your teal hymnal, number 1031, filled with loving kindness. Let's sing. Fine print. First time we'll say I, second time you, third time you. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness.
Thank you, choir, and thank you again so much, Regina. And I just want to add, I know some of you came in late, so not all of you heard this, but really fits with what we've been doing in the back of the sanctuary in the library there. If anyone wants to join, you provided it interesting from like the Brother Lawrence, a Christian perspective. We've been focusing more on the Buddhist tradition, where we draw our information from, but it really fits. To me, I found when you like start to look at the mystical aspects of the various religions, they start to look more and more similar. So if anyone wants to join us for that conversation, that'll be we'll get coffee for a half hour and then 12:30 to 2 in the library. or continue to have coffee as long as until we kick you out. So I'll invite you to join me in extinguishing the chalice. You can find the affirmation, the order of service, and please follow along. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And our closing words are from William Penn. True silence is rest for the mind. It is to the spirit what sleep is to the body, nourishment and refreshment.